Hello everybody, welcome back. What you're looking at is a giant slab of monkey pod that I got from the Costa Rican mill. Links in the description. I got this in January maybe, so it's been nestled in the shop. It keeps getting moved closer and closer to the back, and now today I'm going to turn it into a table. And the journey begins right here with me trying to puzzle it out of the shop without knocking over anything. And I got it to the truck, and I'm just showing you all this so you can see what a pain it is to move a big slab if you don't have the proper equipment. Having this big pickup truck is also helpful. The forklift, of course, is key in moving something like this around. And you notice I had the pipes in the back of my truck to roll it out. And now here I am ready. This is a beautiful slab. It's almost 3.5 inches thick. It has a little bit of live edge, but not enough to keep it. And so that's why I'm going to square it up. It might be blasphemy for some people, but I tried to get the biggest rectangle I could possibly fit in here. I left a little bit of the sapwood on the edge, but it's still fine. There's a lot of character in this slab. You'll notice the slab is thicker than the depth of the saw, so I had to cut by hand about a quarter. And here on the end, you could see right there, so it was about a quarter. This slab came pretty flat. I did not have to flatten it. I would have flattened it if it was for a client, but this is for me, so I'm not overly concerned that the table has a couple of dips and doos in it. But I was amazed at how smooth it came from the mill. I believe they must flatten it. And of course some of the highs and lows were from the drying process. Now you can see here it needs a few fixes with epoxy, so of course I go to Totalboat Epoxy and I fill in some of these cracks. There was a piece of bark still in the slab, and now I filled this crack about 7 times before it stopped leaking, so that was a pain in the butt. And now it's the next day. I have about a 60 grit cutter on that battery operated belt sander. You got to be real careful because any of those scratches you put in are going to be difficult to get out later. So you really just want to rough it close, and then I use the palm sander with like maybe 80 grit on there. And now just to show you, flipping the table over, these are all my patches for the leaks that were going through the table. I'm cleaning those up. Palm sanding, belt sanding. I'm obviously not as concerned about the bottom, but I also want to make sure that that bottom edge looks good. And now I paint it. This is some Totalboat spar varnish. I paint it just to seal the bottom. Now it's time to figure out how I'm going to make a base. I had some sketches, maybe I'll include them here, but nothing ended up coming out the way the table came out, because right here I found these 26-inch long 6x6 3/8 thick, and I said these are going to look great right at each corner. It's going to be reminiscent of the inside of the barn, the post and beam barn. They sell steel in the drop room by the pound. And I ended up leaving with a little bit more than that, so it was about $335 worth of material that I left with. $1.04 a pound. And now here I am. Only one of them needed to be trimmed. This is the one I'm trimming. The others all were the exact size I got. Now these lentils I got them also in the drop room. I'm using these lentils as my connectivity between the legs on the short side. And I had to go to my wall of steel at the other shop and find some leftover material to go for the long ways. I ended up going with a 3x3/4 inch. I'm using my Lincon electric MP215, and I'm throwing in welds. You got to throw the welds in slow because the top of those feet will tip in. You don't want to create a lot of heat, so I don't want to show it here because it's boring, but I weld and wait and weld and wait and weld and wait. Too much heat, and then all of a sudden you lose your square. This fixture table is unbelievable, there's no doubt, but as hard as you clamp something, it doesn't matter. Once it wants to pull in, it'll pull in, so you got to really still go slow. The fixtures are to keep you square when you begin, and you got to maintain that really throughout your welding pace. And those are the 3x3s that I've had since I made the doors for this shop, this particular shop, when I made the doors with JD a few years back. These are some leftover parts. I had one full piece and then one piece I had to splice together. You see it on the opposite side there. And the whole time I'm trying to do this fillet and this blend, and I get it as far as I can with the grinders, and then I have to file it. And I got to use a hand from my buddy Eli stopped by. I was like, oh, while you're here, let's flip the table. And so now I prepped the top several more times off camera. And this is the beginning of maybe 6 or 7 coats, maybe 5 coats. I start with the high gloss, and then I build it up from there, and my final coat is satin, and then I sand it. Now these are going to be the caps for the bottom of the 6x6 legs, because I'm going to put these gliders on there. This table is going to be very heavy, weighs about 700 pounds after all said and done. And I want to be able to push it around. I don't want wheels, they're too sloppy looking. And this is polypropylene 1/2 inch thick sheeting. It's King Color Core, usually if you're using signs. You can see through that face color and the interior color is revealed. But here I'm using them as hockey pucks. I start by gluing them, and then the next day I drill and I screw them. And I'm making sure that when I sink the screw, it goes a few millimeters below the surface. And that's soft plastic, so of course it's going to do that. And now here I am with Mike moving the table for the first time. Mike is really good at picking up heavy things, and here you see him having no problem. But me, I'm struggling. I knew if I could just slowly control it. Everything's just a slowly controlled fall when you move heavy things. Right there, a slowly controlled fall. Boom. And we're on the table. Now this is the first time I'm seeing the slab and the base together, so this is an exciting moment. And I put those spacers there to save our fingers, but it doesn't save Mike's finger right there. He got a pinch. That gap is very intentional, and if you follow me on Patreon, you would have seen me talk and discuss this. The gap is to disguise the discrepancy of flatness between the bottom of the slab and the steel table, which of course is very flat from being on that fixture table by strong hand tools. But also it does look a little bit stylish, and here you see me raised up quite a bit. It's raised up about 3 inches while I paint the legs with Rust-Oleum primer. 2 reasons for the Rust-Oleum primer. I wanted to fill in some of the little discrepancies. I also used a little bit of wood glue to fill in some of the pits and holes left over from the weld and the grind, but also prepare the surface. A lot of people said in my Instagram and Patreon, you really need to do an old metal finish like I used to do in the city basement, but there was just too much to prep. Now you just watched me sand through the first couple of layers of the finish, and that's just to get a nice smooth, get rid of the brush marks and stuff, and then I'll wax it. But here, this is the Rust-Oleum. This is a semi-gloss or satin black. I could have gone with the metal finish, which would have just taken forever to prep and sand. I had different types of metal. Some was pitted, some was not, so that's why I just went with one continuous coat of paint. And now here you see it. I just used some old furniture wax I had, some Johnson & Johnson furniture wax. And I will keep prepping this table as the top cures. The top's going to still cure. It's been about 100 degrees a day while I worked on this, so the top isn't really cured as it should be. In a couple of weeks, I'll do a nice buff and sand on it. And now this is how I attach the slab to the frame. I'm just using 3/4 inch plywood. I screw it to the frame. It hangs over the frame. And I paint it black. I should have done this with steel, but I just wasn't thinking when I was still 100%, not 100% sure how I was going to attach the top to the bottom. And I wasn't sure about that gap. I wanted to see it in person before I made a final decision. But wood is going to do the job just as well. It's really just to keep the tremendously heavy slab from sliding off. The slab will move. You'll get some wood movement, I'm sure of it. And those just spindly little screws you're going to watch me put in a second are just probably going to just move over. I'm just using thin little Robertson screws that are about 2 inches long. And the wood itself, if that wood moves, the screws will probably break before any deflection happens in the framework, which is obviously fine. Now I'm using these furniture skates to move this table to the end. I have a very interesting way of picking this up. This is going to go on the second floor of the horse barn I've been working on. It's going to be my leather studio on the second floor, and this is my work table for my leather studio. And here I prepared a makeshift forklift. I screwed that all together with big timber 6-inch screws. And here I am for the first time. You notice that it's ratchet strapped to the bucket of my 1997 Case 590 Turbo backhoe. And here I'm just fortifying the lift, making sure that I'm on the frame itself. I wouldn't want the frame to pop off the slab, so I wanted to make sure that I was picking up only from steel. And now here I am. This is my very first pick 'em up. You can see my camera set up there on the floor too for that shot right there. This is very precarious. I'm going very slow even though it's all sped up. I don't really know what to expect. I know that this is very high and the bucket's going to bottom out at one point in the air. I know I could get at least the front legs in, and that's really what I was going for. And just as I calculated, the back legs won't go in because that's as high as the bucket will go. So I get my Harbor Freight chain hoist with some ropes and some strap, and I pick it up. Now here I am, I'm just picking it up, and as it slowly starts to come in, it falls off of the dollies here, which was unexpected, but it was okay, because the flooring is going to handle it. There we go. Boom. We made it in safe, and I just wanted you to see the backhoe in its place. And that was a good fix. Did it all by myself. No help from anybody. And those gliders right here, you could see why I made those gliders. This table weighs out, calculated to about 750 pounds. And I'm able to push it around the shop by myself. It got it upstairs by myself. This is my future leather studio, and I've been making all the furniture for it. And this is a beautiful addition. I'm very proud of this table. It came out really nice. This nice little crotch burl there. This was probably a crotch from a giant tree somewhere in Costa Rica. And now here it is. It's living in upstate New York in my shop. Thank you, Costa Rican Mill. Thank you, Totalboat. Thank you, Lincon Electric. And thank you, everybody that follows me on Patreon. You guys saw a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff leading up to today. And here it is. Thank you all very, very, very much. And follow me on Patreon for some behind-the-scenes stuff for every build I do. Love you.